Forge. Today we're going to be working on some utensils. I was recently at a LARPing event and I saw some folks that had some forged forks and spoons, and you'll see knives as well sometimes. So today I want to try to make at least a fork and a spoon. If we have time, we might try to make a knife as well. And we're going to be using, like in the last video, we're using some 1/4 by 3/4 inch material. Now I'm using this mostly for keeping the material the same between both projects. In this case, with the fork and the spoon primarily. Starting off with some wider material to hopefully make it easier for the spooning portion of the spoon. Now you can use other materials. Like I've done some forks like this one out of 1/4 inch, and that's perfectly fine. It's, use whatever you have available to you. For these, I'm going to be trying to using, like I said, this 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch material. The length doesn't really matter a whole lot, your starting length, because we're going to be isolating about the first 2 inches for the spoon, probably only about the first inch for the fork. So we're going to isolate this first inch for the fork, split it, draw out the tines, bend them over, and by the first 2 inches for the spoon, and then we're going to take that over to a swage block and use that to spread it out in the spoon form. So we'll get this heated up and we'll get started. Here we're using our guillotine tool to isolate about the first inch of this section that's going to become the fork. The dead blow hammer never works as well as I would like it to, so I will switch to a steel hammer, and the next section will be isolating the first 2 inches of what is going to become the spoon. Now we're starting to taper down the portion that's going to be the handle. Looking for a nice, gentle taper. And depending on the look you're going for, you want to be extra careful with these hammer blows so you don't mess up the transition point where the usable end, so the spoon end or the fork end, transitions into the handle, because you can get some really nice looking shoulders there, and you don't want to bugger that up, as you'll actually see I do later on with the fork. Here's the Hardy tool, the cutoff tool that I'll be using to cut off the end of what will be the fork. In hindsight, I don't actually know why I did this, as it already had a nice start to the taper behind it. That would have been a perfectly usable handle portion for it.
It would have saved me some time and some headache later, but I did. And if you ever do need to, you know, I'd recommend doing it when I did it. You want to do it early before you've got the fork or spoon portion or, you know, the usable portion started, because if you try to do the handle afterwards, you're going to be more likely to mess up that usable portion. So here for the spoon, I've got the handle nicely tapered, and you can see that shoulder transition from the handle into what will be the spoon portion of it is starting to get some nice definition as well. Here you'll definitely be able to see the areas for the fork where I had messed up on the shoulders. I think that part of this was a just hammer control and also cutting off that excess in the beginning that I didn't really need to. It would have given me that extra mass to leave room for that nicer shoulder transition like I'm going to have on the spoon. Still perfectly functional, and that's one of the things that I tell people and I like about blacksmithing is at the end of the day, as long as you've got a usable thing, you know, and you're happy with the result, then you're doing it right. So here we're putting the fork down, working to get it into the hold fast tool. Need to reline it up a little bit better. And I've got a piece of steel under it to use as some sacrificial metal because I don't want to chisel directly into the top of my anvil. I've got a few different types of chisels that I'm going to be using just to kind of show that there are options you can use. So this is a longer handled chisel that I had forged out of some car spring to get it started with. Here I get it in a little bit easier. And this is a set tool, basically a tool that has a handle on it. And this one is, while larger, has the same kind of edge to it. That mass and everything, for whatever reason, making it jump more. Also, probably because the top of my anvil is not completely flat, it's causing that sacrificial plate that it's attached to jump a little bit more. But just keep at it and just work your way through it. And eventually you're going to want to flip it over once you're almost all the way through and shear through the other side, because it helps to give it less of a raggedy edge going in one direction. So here I've switched over to a rounding hammer for spreading out the material. The one thing I do wish I had done before getting to this point was take that front part and knock those corners in a little bit, giving it a little bit of a taper like the front of a spoon has. But the rounding hammer works really well for spreading out the material quickly, getting it thinned out so it'll go into the spoon form in my swage block a little bit better. So for the fork section, doing a little convenience bend on one of the tines to help get it out of the way a little bit while I work on the other one. With how short these are starting, it's a little rough anyway. If I was going to do this again, I'd probably start with those a little bit longer, maybe make both the spoon and the fork have a 2-inch isolation at the front. But now it's just a matter of, taking your time and slowly working these down into a pointed taper so you have your usable fork end for stabbing things. So here's where I did try to tap in those corners a little bit. Like I had said earlier, I wish I had done it beforehand, because the thinner you make it, the harder that is to do without really starting to just fold over the metal in a non-productive way. Here we're getting out the bighorn to go in the hardy slot as I work on my camera placement. And this is going to be done for bending the forked tines over. Now that I've actually got it in the right spot, and you can even see here how the tines aren't really positioned the same way, and I do go back and fix this a little bit more even after the video. Like it just kind of looks a little crooked in the neck, and that again would have been solved if I had left that mass on there originally, been able to keep that initial shoulder portion there, but that'll be something to remember for next time. Remember, even if you make a mistake, if you learn from it, then it had its uses. Since I remembered this time while it was hot, I got out my touch marks and put them in there. I try to keep them near the anvil so I don't forget, but I have a habit of forgetting to do those on my projects. So here's the start of using the spoon impression in my swage block, using the peen portion of a small ball peen hammer just to try to slowly work it in, trying to start up on the sides, the edges, and work my way down towards the middle. I do feel like if I had got it a little bit thinner, a little bit wider, maybe even a little bit longer, this would have been a little easier. So now we're going to take it to the grinder for the spoon and see if we can get some of those edges cleaned up a little bit, especially those front corners. This isn't for any kind of finishing work, just be kind of smoothing out those top edges because we're going to see if it actually works. It looks functional. And yeah, it'll hold some water. Definitely would not recommend actually taking a sip of any of that water, but it does show that the spoon will spoon. So here we are at the end. You can see this is a picture of the fork and the spoon. I set out to make a functional spoon and a functional fork for use in LARPing and camping, and I was able to accomplish that goal. There were some hiccups along the way. There were some things, like I had said, that I would have done differently next time, but that's how you learn. You go out there, you try, whether or not you think you're going to fail, give it a go. Definitely, do some planning, some thinking, some research, plot out your project a little bit. But, in the course of doing that project, you're probably going to learn something to do better next time. So thank you again for joining me here at Stout Hammer Forge. If you want to leave any comments, any suggestions of things you'd like to see me attempt, if you think I'm doing terrible, if you like what I'm doing, any of that is welcome. Get out to your shop, try to make something, and have a good day.